The parable of the Pharisee and tax collector. In this parable, a Pharisee and a tax collector went to the temple to pray. The Pharisee prayed about how good he was, but the tax collector asked for God's mercy as he was a sinner. A Pharisee was a member of a Jewish sect known for strict observance of ceremonies of the religious law. What were the differences between a Pharisee and a tax collector? Now Pharisees were men that knew the scriptures and they strictly followed everything that is said, and one that was totally correct or morally superior to others. Tax collectors were hated in biblical times and were regarded as sinners. They were Jews who worked for the Romans, so this made them traitors. People resented paying taxes to the foreigners who ruled over them. So, here is what Jesus said in this parable. Luke 18:9-14, NLT. Then Jesus told this story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. Two men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, and the other was a despised tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer: I thank you, God, that I am not like other people, cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I give you 1/10 of my income. But the tax collector stood at a distance and dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed. Instead, he beat his chest in sorrow, saying, O God, be merciful to me, for I am a sinner. I tell you, this sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before God. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. What does this parable mean to us? One day, Jesus was talking to some people that say that they were better than everyone else. The Pharisee began to pray and said, God, thank you, that I am not a bad man. Like robberies, evildoers, but even this tax collector, I obey your laws. And I give 1/10 of my money. Then the tax collector prayed and he stood far away and wouldn't look up to heaven because he was ashamed. He beat his chest and said, God have mercy on me, for I am a sinner. So Jesus asks us this question. Who do you think went home justified? Which prayer do you think that God liked more? And why do you think he liked the Pharisee's prayer or the tax collector's prayer? So here's what Jesus told us. He said that the tax collector is the one that went home justified and forgiven, but not the Pharisee. So God is looking for humble people, but how do I become humble? We need to understand sin and understand our own sin. Does sin separate us from God? That's pretty scary. So what is sin? We know that murder must be a sin and is wrong. Do we think about lying as a sin and even one lie separates us from God? Jesus didn't indicate that the Bible tells us that the punishment for sin is death. Jesus decided to die for us. He died and took the sins of the whole world on himself. We need to learn from our sin and that we aren't better than anyone else. Of the two men in this story, only the tax collector had pleased God, because he had been humble and asked for forgiveness. A person's attitude is important to God. Thank you for watching.